Keys to Therapy. Today's episode is going to be all about being a private pay therapist. So in the last video I did, I talked all about taking insurance as a therapist, which I've done in pretty much every place I had worked prior to starting my own practice. And, I discussed all the ups and downs of that and what that looks like and pros and cons and all of that stuff. So I wanted to talk about the other side of the coin, which is where I'm currently at in my career, and that is being a private pay therapist. So with being private pay, or out of network, whatever you want to call it, some people say there's a differentiation between the two, and I'll explain that. But there's sometimes a stigma that comes with that. I didn't realize that until I started networking a bit and talking about being private pay. When people would say, "What insurances are you taking?" And I would say, "Oh, I'm out of network, or I'm private pay." And they would be like, "Oh." I've had people say things, and it's never the clients. Funny enough, it's other therapists. Say things like, "Well, I like to be accessible to clients," or "I didn't go into this field for the money," or, whatever other pieces of it. And that's fine if that's truly what they believe and how they feel. There just shouldn't necessarily be a judgment on how other people are practicing, because I don't judge people for taking insurance. I think that there's room for all of us. So I found that the people who are very triggered by it are ones that are typically scared of being able to do it, or not willing to put in the extra work to be able to set it up that way, or kind of have their own issues with money, and those are coming through, because there's plenty of therapists I've met who are like, "Oh, cool," and that's the end of it. So just be prepared if you are wanting to go down the private pay path, that there may be some judgment coming from fellow therapists, but overall, my experience with it has been great. So like I mentioned in the last video, working at different places that took insurance, there was a lot of different pieces of it that I just didn't love. I didn't love that payments would come in at random times. And even though I was a W-2 at a practice, so I got paid consistently, I was aware that sometimes insurances didn't pay consistently, or there would be long delays in the reimbursement checks. So didn't love that when I was planning to work by myself and for myself. There's also like I mentioned previously as well, the CPT codes. So the different codes for 60-minute sessions, 40-minute sessions, 30-minute sessions, and how insurances get to dictate how much you get paid for each. So I don't love that idea. I don't love that if I blocked off an hour and a client happens to be 10 minutes late, now the session's 50 minutes, I have to call it a 45-minute session based off the codes, and now I made $20 or $30 less because they were late, but I blocked the hour. That didn't sit well with me. Also, I like things to be streamlined and automated. So in making the decision to go private pay, I wanted things to be as quick and easy as possible. And it's not possible to make things super quick and easy with insurance billing. Now, people have their process down. I know plenty of people who are amazing at the billing and they've got it down, but I didn't want to do the billing at all. So quick and easy to me meant non-existent for billing, and I didn't want to spend any of my time doing anything really but seeing my clients and maybe some marketing or networking and stuff like that, which every private practice therapist typically has to do. So there was a lot of pieces that went into it for me. Also, being solo, I was like, I don't want to have to do a ton of admin stuff or outsource anything, or anything like that. I want things to be, again, as streamlined as easy as possible. So when I was developing my practice, I decided to make it private pay so that way it could be. And I felt good after having spent a couple years having conversations with clients about money and fees, no-show fees and cancel fees and stuff like that, and just understanding more about where I was in my career and what I did and didn't want to put up with, and my own personal tolerance for some of the busy work and my own financial stuff. So I decided when building it that I wasn't going to take insurance. And again, it's a very personal decision, and there's no judgment on my end either way, because one of my best friends went and started a practice and is taking insurance, and she's doing amazing. So, again, it's your personal preference. But for me, I decided that I was going to go this route and be completely out of network with all insurances. Now, where there's a bit of a difference in the terms is a lot of therapists will just say private pay, right? It's easy, it's quicker, it makes more sense. But there's a difference sometimes between like a private pay therapist and out of network therapist. So even though you could use the terms interchangeably, I'll just kind of clarify what they are in case somebody else clarifies it for you along the way. You'll kind of understand why. But some people, so technically I would be considered a out of network therapist, which means that I give super bills to clients, detailed receipts with all the codes, and that'll be my next video to go into that. But I tend to do that. I make sure all my clients have a super bill. If they want to submit it to their insurance, great, they do. If they don't want to or don't need to, then they don't. But I provide that to them. Now, some therapists don't want to do that because they feel like that means that they still have some sort of contact with the insurance company, and that the insurance company can still like have some sort of say in what goes on. But ultimately they don't, because they didn't pay me. So if anything, they might talk to the client and have some sort of issue, but they can't take money back from me. There's no clawbacks like there can be when you take insurance. But therapists who consider themselves completely private pay, that means that they don't even give a super bill. For some of them, they don't want to. They really want to have it be like completely clean. Also, if you're doing a super bill, you have to put a diagnosis down. And some people, depending on the population they work with or their level of comfortability, they don't want to diagnose people. Or they're seeing people for like life stressors, like Z codes and stuff, which aren't billable. So they kind of can't give you a super bill. You're not going to get anything from it. So there's lots of reasons behind that. So for the sake of today's video, so I'm not having to sit here and be like an out-of-network therapist, I'm just going to say private pay the whole time. And honestly, for a lot of my clients who, I would say it's probably maybe like a third submit super bills and the rest don't. So, it kind of is both actually, both private pay and out of network. So it really depends. But basically, in coming to terms with like what this would look like for me, so being a private pay therapist, first I set a fee. I looked at, especially starting out on my own, I looked at what the insurances were paying, what was the highest paying insurance, what would clients typically have to pay anyway at the beginning of the year when their plan started over and to meet their deductible. I looked at, how many clients I wanted to see and what that fee would need to be with now expenses and taxes and all this other stuff taken out in order for me to make a salary that felt like comparable with what I was making at other jobs. Preferably a little bit more, but I was fine with starting out at the same. And so setting a fee, and then you want to understand what your process is going to be. Are you providing super bills? Are you not? Are you using an electronic health record? Because most of them will just automatically go ahead and create a super bill for you, which is amazing. And I use Simple Practice, and that's what they do. So I have that set automatically. I don't even have to go in and make it. But deciding if you're going to submit or give clients super bills, like what that's going to look like and how they're going to get them. And then my clients all are required to have a credit card on file. And so after I see them, that night, which is technically like the next day, 1 a.m. or something like that, the system charges their credit card. So I see my client and I do my note and I'm kind of done. So then the payment comes in automatically. The super bill is sent to them automatically at the first of every month for the previous month. And then that's it. So you figure out what day you're going to pay yourself, how often you're going to pay yourself, what that system looks like for you, and that's it. So I really liked that idea of being able to control when I got paid, how I got paid, what money was coming in, and all of that. So to me, it made the most sense. And it was what I was the most comfortable with. And I think that it's a personal choice. So you have to decide, all of that. Like, how comfortable are you? Any money issues or mindset issues that you have, being able to work through that before you become private pay. Understanding that being private pay or out of network means that you're probably going to have to market a bit more. You're going to have, typically, not always, but you're going to have a better website. You're going to have some sort of like social media presence or presence within your community. You're going to have to take some extra steps to make sure that you're visible, because I have found personally that some directories like Psych Today really have not been helpful at all with getting private pay clients, primarily because people could just go to the top and they can click immediately which insurance that they have, and it filters you out. And I think a lot of clients do it that way. So if you're not taking insurance, you're automatically not going to show up for them. And you're not going to show up on certain like websites for the insurance or provider lists they give you and stuff like that. So you just have to take a couple extra steps. Also, I think it helps a lot to have a very defined niche, so that way people understand what you work with and who you work with. So I think sometimes in other settings you can get away with being a generalist, but if you're private pay and somebody's going to pay you your full fee, I think it's helpful for them to understand that you understand them and you know what they're going through. Because if not, then it's going to feel like, I don't know a nice way to put it, like there's nothing special necessarily about you understanding them, and why pay when they could just see somebody else who's a generalist for free or a low copay. So if you have some sort of specialty, whether it's a specialty training or a specific population you work with, they may feel like, no, you get it, and I'd rather pay for somebody who I know gets it and understands me than take a risk with somebody who doesn't. So sometimes they see more value in it, like in that potential bond that you guys may have in your work. So that may feel like, then if it feels like it's going to be more of a value for me, then I'm willing to put the money in to get it. There's also a lot of stuff with out-of-network benefits and things like that you can educate clients on. And I'll talk about that in the next video with the super bills, but there's a whole process that you can do with that. So that way you are still making things accessible financially to clients by providing them that, if that's what you choose to do. And the other thing I have found for me is, in being private pay, that's allowed me to have 3 reduced rate spots for clients. So if a client is going through something, or there's some sort of transition in their life and something's going on and they need to start at a lower rate, I have the spots for that. So that's afforded me the ability to do that. If you sign a contract with insurance, you have to charge and accept that amount that the insurance says. You can't waive a copay because the client's struggling for a bit and you feel bad. Like you have no leeway with any of that. So you have to charge what your contract says because you signed a contract. So with private pay, it could be a little bit more lenient. So I've had clients that have started private pay and been that way for a while, and then they graduate college, or they change jobs or lost their job, or whatever's going on. And if I've had the spot, then I put them in it, and they pay a very low rate in comparison, and they can still have treatment, and it's at a way, it's in a space that's affordable to them. So I wouldn't be able to do that otherwise necessarily if I was in network with any of their insurances. So there's benefits to it too for the clients. And that's where it's a little frustrating to me sometimes when people say being a private pay therapist means that you're not accessible, because a lot of my clients who submit super bills get back like 75% or more of what they've paid me, which then means that that's a normal copay essentially that they paid when all is said and done. So the clients pay me, they submit their super bill, they get paid by the insurance, and everybody's good. So as long as they have the money to front it, I guess, and spend for the appointment to begin with, a lot of them are getting their reimbursement checks within a few weeks, which is helpful because they usually get a big chunk if they're submitting like 1 month at a time. I have a few clients that I know will submit a couple months at a time, and then they just get that one big check, and then they do whatever with it. So totally on them. But I think if you want to go this route, then absolutely work on your money mindset. Be comfortable having conversations about money. Don't overly defend your status as private pay with clients or with other therapists. Just own it. This is what you chose to do, and it is what it is. And have your systems in place to make things as automated as possible, so that way your life's just easier and you can just focus on seeing your clients, doing your notes, and like I said, occasionally like marketing or networking and stuff along those lines, and then that's it. So I've had great experience in the 2 years plus that I've been doing this as private pay. I would never go back personally to any other type of way of doing this, especially given these last few months. There was a major hack with one of the insurance companies and systems, and I've had friends and I've seen in some of the therapist communities that people have not been paid for the past 2 to 3 months because of that. And obviously that's not anything to do with the clients, but at the end of the day, if therapists aren't getting paid and they can't sustain themselves, then they're not going to be great at their job. They're not going to be as present or as accessible. So I think that there's a lot of things with this entire system that needs to be overhauled. But you have to make a choice if you're going into private practice, or even if you're joining a group practice, you need to make a choice as far as like what exactly are you comfortable with financially and what do you want that to look like. So I hope that was helpful and maybe give you a little bit more insight into what it is like to be a private pay therapist. If you have any questions or anything, just go ahead and comment below. If you want to subscribe, that'd help me out to continue to put free information out here and get more viewership. So thank you if you have subscribed, and please subscribe if you haven't. And I will see you guys next episode. Thanks.